How I discovered my roommate was stealing from me. Hey Reddit, I've been struggling with something recently and could really use some advice. I found out my roommate, who I thought was a friend, has been stealing from me for who knows how long. I'm still processing everything and not sure how to move forward. For some background, I'm the type of person who likes to keep things organized and in their place. I'm particular about my belongings and always make sure things are where they should be. A few weeks ago, I took a much-needed 2-week vacation to visit family. Before I left, I made sure everything in my apartment was secure. I don't have a lot of expensive stuff, but I keep some emergency cash stashed in a drawer, and I always double-check that things are where I expect them to be before leaving. I've never had a reason to worry about anything going missing. My roommate, let's call them A, and I have been living together for about a year. We've known each other since college, and while we were never super close, we always got along well enough. Living together was smooth, and I never had any major issues. Before I left, I asked A if they could watch the apartment while I was away. They seemed totally fine with it, so I figured everything would be okay. The first few days of my trip were great. I was spending time with family, relaxing, and just enjoying the break from daily life. But then, a few days into my trip, I got a strange call from A. They sounded nervous and said they needed to talk to me about something important. At the time, I brushed it off, thinking maybe there was a minor issue with the apartment, like a plumbing problem or a small mess. I wasn't too worried and figured I'd deal with it when I got back. Fast forward to when I returned home. I was happy to be back in my space and ready to get back to my normal routine. As I started unpacking and settling back in, I went to grab some of the emergency cash I'd left in my drawer, just a small stash I keep for things like takeout or unexpected expenses. To my surprise, the cash was gone. At first, I thought I must have moved it and forgotten, but after checking every drawer and going through my memory, I realized it wasn't just misplaced. It was gone. That's when I started to feel uneasy. I've never been careless with my things, and the idea that something was missing made me anxious. I didn't want to jump to conclusions, so I tried to convince myself I must have spent it or forgotten where I put it. Over the next couple of days, I noticed other small things were missing too. Little items, like a few kitchen gadgets and even some snacks I had left, were gone. At first, I thought maybe A had borrowed them or eaten the snacks, but it started to feel like too much of a coincidence. The uneasy feeling I had started to grow, but I still didn't want to assume the worst. A had been living with me for a while, and I didn't want to accuse them of anything without proof. I decided to keep an eye on things without confronting A just yet. I started making a mental inventory of my belongings, and every time I noticed something else missing, I wrote it down. As the list grew longer, my anxiety did too. Eventually, it became impossible to ignore. This wasn't just my imagination. The final straw came when I realized some important documents I kept in a locked drawer were missing. These weren't just any documents, they were things like my birth certificate and other personal papers. I never took them out and always kept them in the same spot. That's when I knew something was seriously wrong. I had security cameras installed in the apartment, mainly for peace of mind, but I'd never really needed to use them before. After discovering the missing documents, I decided to check the footage. I wasn't expecting much, but I knew I had to see if there was any explanation. What I found made my stomach drop. There, clear as day, was A going into my room multiple times while I was away. I watched as they opened the drawer where I kept my cash, took it, and put it into their bag. They even went through other parts of my apartment, taking random things here and there, snacks, gadgets, and more. The footage confirmed what I had been dreading. A had been stealing from me the whole time I was away. I couldn't believe it. This was someone I'd trusted to live with me and take care of my place while I was gone, and they were stealing from me behind my back. I felt a mix of betrayal, anger, and sadness. I didn't know what to do or how to confront them, but I knew I couldn't let it slide. After a lot of thought, I decided to confront A in person. I didn't want to have this conversation over the phone or through messages, it needed to be face to face. I asked them to meet me at the apartment, and they agreed, probably not knowing what was coming. When I showed up, I sat them down and calmly told them what I'd found. I showed them the footage from the security cameras, and their reaction was immediate. They looked shocked and horrified. At first, they tried to deny it, but the evidence was right there in front of them. Eventually, they broke down and admitted to everything. I confessed that they'd been struggling financially for months and had been too embarrassed to ask for help. They said they thought they could take some cash and small items to get by and replace them before I noticed. They were clearly ashamed and kept apologizing, saying they never meant to hurt me and didn't know what else to do. Here's the thing, I understood that they were going through a tough time, but the trust between us was shattered. I couldn't believe they'd rather steal from me than just ask for help. I felt torn. On one hand, I felt sympathy for their situation. But on the other hand, I couldn't get past the fact that they'd violated my trust in such a major way. After thinking it over, I made the difficult decision to ask A to move out. I told them I appreciated their apology and understood they were in a bad spot, but the trust between us was broken, and I didn't feel comfortable living with them anymore. A seemed to understand and agreed to start looking for a new place. The next few weeks were awkward, to say the least. The atmosphere in the apartment was tense, and I couldn't shake the feeling of betrayal every time I saw them. I did return the money and some of the items they took, but the damage was already done. They moved out within a month, and I haven't spoken to them since. Now I'm left feeling conflicted. Some friends have been supportive, saying I did the right thing by protecting myself and setting boundaries. Others have suggested I might have been too harsh and should have given A another chance, especially given their financial struggles. What do you think, Reddit? Did I do the right thing by asking A to move out, or should I have handled the situation differently? I'd love to hear your thoughts, especially if you've been in a similar situation. TLDR, I discovered my roommate, who was also a friend, was stealing from me while I was away on vacation. They confessed and apologized, saying they were struggling financially, but I decided to ask them to move out because I felt the trust was broken. Now I'm wondering if I handled it the right way. Update. Hey everyone, I wanted to give an update on the situation with my roommate, we'll call her A, who I found out was stealing from me while I was away on vacation. I'm still processing everything, but a lot has happened since I first posted, and I thought it would be helpful to share how things unfolded. I also really appreciated all the advice and support I received from my original post, so thank you. So, after I confronted A and showed her the footage from my security cameras, she broke down and admitted to everything. She was super apologetic and explained that she'd been going through some really tough financial times for the past few months. According to her, she had lost her job a while back and had been struggling to keep up with bills and expenses. She said she was too embarrassed to tell me what was going on and thought she could just borrow the money and a few other things without me noticing. Her plan, apparently, was to replace everything before I got home. Obviously, that didn't happen. When I asked her why she didn't just talk to me, she got emotional and said she didn't want to seem like a burden or have me think less of her. Honestly, it was hard not to feel a little bad for her because I could tell she felt guilty, and I could imagine how desperate she must have been to do something like this. That said, I was still hurt. The trust we had was completely shattered. It's one thing to be going through a rough time, but another to steal from a friend, especially when she could have just asked for help. I think that's what made it so hard for me to move past. After talking things through, I agreed to pay me back for everything she took. This included the cash I had stashed in my drawer and the few small items she had taken around the apartment. Over the course of the next couple of weeks, she gradually gave me back the money she had taken. Thankfully, it wasn't a huge amount, and for the other things she had borrowed, like some kitchen gadgets and snacks, she either replaced them or paid me for their value. In total, she was able to reimburse me for everything she stole, which I appreciated. At the end of the day, she did make an effort to make things right financially, and that helped me feel like at least one part of this mess was resolved. That being said, the situation between us was still incredibly awkward. Even after she paid me back, it was clear that we couldn't continue living together. I told her that I appreciated her efforts to make things right but that the trust was broken and I didn't feel comfortable having her as my roommate anymore. I seemed to understand and didn't push back on my decision. She started looking for a new place pretty much right after our conversation, and I think she realized there was no saving our friendship at that point. The next few weeks were uncomfortable, to say the least. We were civil with each other, but the tension was obvious. I could tell she felt guilty and awkward around me, and I was still trying to come to terms with everything. We didn't have any blow-ups or arguments, but we definitely weren't hanging out or chatting like we used to. It just felt like a countdown to her moving out, which she did about 3 weeks later. The day she left was bittersweet. On one hand, I felt a huge sense of relief, but on the other hand, I couldn't help but feel sad about how everything had ended. This was someone I had considered a friend, and now I wasn't sure I'd ever hear from her again. After I moved out, I took some time to reflect on everything that happened. Even though she paid me back and apologized multiple times, I couldn't shake the sense of betrayal I felt. I realized that the money wasn't the main issue, it was the broken trust that hurt the most. I'd opened up my home to her, trusted her, and she violated that trust in a way that made it impossible for us to continue living together. No amount of apologies or repayment could fully fix that. At the same time, I couldn't ignore that she did try to make amends, which I guess says something about her character, even if it came too late. I've talked to some mutual friends about the situation, and the reactions have been mixed. Some people think I did the right thing by asking her to move out and protecting myself. They've reminded me that stealing is a major breach of trust, no matter the circumstances. Others have suggested that I might have been too harsh, especially since she did pay me back and seemed genuinely remorseful. They've argued that maybe I could have given her another chance, considering the tough situation she was in. To be honest, I've had moments where I've wondered if I overreacted. But at the end of the day, I know that I wouldn't feel comfortable living with someone who had stolen from me, no matter how much I wanted to forgive them. As for what happens next, I've already started looking for a new roommate. It's nerve-wracking because now I'm way more cautious about who I let into my space. I'm definitely going to be setting clearer boundaries and keeping a closer eye on my things from now on, though I hope I never have to deal with something like this again. I've learned a lot from this experience, and while I'm still hurt, I feel like I'm in a better place moving forward. Thanks again to everyone who commented on my original post and shared their thoughts. It really helped me navigate a difficult situation, and I'm grateful for the support. I'll keep focusing on rebuilding trust in my own space and making sure I feel secure in my home again. If you've been in a similar situation or have any further advice on how to move forward, I'd love to hear it. It's been a tough few weeks, but I'm optimistic that things will get better from here. Thanks for watching, guys. If you enjoyed these Reddit stories, don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit that bell so you never miss an update. See you in the next one.